Loud outside, right. Good morning, and welcome to Pancakes and Politics, another virtual installation that today's circumstance has drawn us to. It is my pleasure this morning to introduce Mr. Hiram Jackson, who is the CEO of Real Times Media and the publisher of the Michigan Chronicle, who will bring greetings and thank our sponsors.
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, Detroit, and all of you who are outside Detroit. I hope you're healthy, and I hope your families are healthy. You know, for 15 years, we've been having important dialogues in southeastern Michigan, and I can't think of a more important dialogue to have than the one that we're having today. Social justice and corporate accountability. You know, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, who would have thought that we'd be in this situation? COVID-19 crisis, protests, but in a weird way, I think it's bringing us all together, and that's what today is all about. 15 years having this conversation about socioeconomics, poverty, corporate, career advancement, and it's been great. But you can't do something like this without great sponsors, and I want to thank our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor is PNC Bank, and our platinum sponsors are Walker Miller Energy Services, Rocket Mortgage, DTE Foundation, and Signal Restoration. Our pioneer sponsors are HAP, Comcast Business, Henry Ford Health Systems, and our medallion sponsors are Bank of America, AAA of Michigan, Ascension, UHY, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Flagstar Bank. We have an amazing panel for you today. Some of these folks are my great friends and some new friends. We want to have a real conversation about race in America and how corporations can help all of us pull our common agenda together. So please enjoy the program, and again, please be safe.
So this morning, as Hiram mentioned, a conversation. Shortly, I will introduce our panelists, and what we hope to have is a very candid and open hour-long dialogue. Not a speech, not a Q&A, but a chat with the seven of us up here. And so with no further ado, if I could please introduce our panelists, and I'll start here to my left, someone that needs no introduction, the Reverend Wendell Anthony, who is the pastor of Fellowship Chapel since 1986 and has rebuilt several years ago a beautiful structure on the west side of Detroit. He was a little nervous coming over here to our real-time studio on the east side, but we got him protection outside. And Rev has also, since 1993, presided over the largest branch in the country, the Detroit branch of the NAACP. So, Rev, thank you and welcome this morning. Gary Torgo, no stranger to the city of Detroit, has been an investor, an astute and respected businessman, and a tremendous philanthropist for the past few decades. He is now chairman of the TCF Financial Corporation that has $47 billion in assets and 500 branches throughout the Midwest. Gary made a very significant announcement in this regard, but I will let him talk about that a little later. Carla Walker Miller, good friend, celebrating 20 years. Happy 20th anniversary of Walker Miller Energy Services, which helps electric and gas utilities achieve the mandated energy reduction goals that reduce energy rates. Most importantly, she creates jobs in Detroit for black folks. Carla, welcome. Jeff Lambert, as Hiram said, we got a lot of friends up here, a good friend, and for me, being in a similar space, a very respected and successful colleague, is CEO of his firm Lambert that he co-founded in his basement in 1998, which sounds like a tech story. Since that time, he's a top 5 agency in the Midwest, and he has over 100 clients in 20 states. Very diversified business. Welcome, Jeff. And Kelly Root, I feel like this is your coming out party because Kelly is the managing editor of Cranes, who after a 15-year career with the Detroit News took that position in March, and then very soon after we were all locked up in our homes. And so Kelly, this is your party. I would have brought some champagne except for the hour and Reverend sitting here. And so, but welcome to your position and welcome to Pancakes and Politics. Look, I found myself Tuesday on the western side of the state, about 45 minutes out into Lake Michigan with, as Rev would say, some of my fair-skinned brothers. And we are talking about the issue of race and what's going on in America. And they were challenged to understand that Rev taking to the streets in peaceful protest, why that was the solution, that why black folks thought that was the solution. And what I explained to them carefully, because I was out in the middle of Lake Michigan on this boat, was that I just simply pointed out, look at what's happening in the United States now. Look what individuals are doing. Look where companies are speaking out and making promises. Things seem to be changing, but we have found ourselves here before where incidents have happened and there's a bunch of uproar and discontent, promises made, it fades away and people forget about it. I personally feel like this time is different, and I hope this time is different, but we're going to talk about that and other things this morning. But let me talk about corporate responsibility. And my general question actually to each of you is, and Vicki, maybe we'll get some input from the audience, is, what do you all think is the responsibility of corporate America as it relates to these issues of race, diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I'll start with you, Rev, because you found yourself in a position, I think, of, once again, as a leader in the community, stepping up and working with the mayor to bring some folks together.
And Dennis, before Reverend answers that question, we want to hear from our sponsors, PNC Bank and Signal Restoration. So let's take a look at that video.
Good morning, and welcome to Pancakes and Politics. My name is Amy McLean. I am the Vice President of Client and Community Relations Director for PNC Bank. It's truly my pleasure to welcome you this morning on behalf of Rick DeVore, our Regional President, and all of PNC. In the 7 years PNC has served as presenting sponsor for Pancakes and Politics, today's topic may be the most important, not just for Detroit, but our entire nation. Our thanks to Vicki Thomas and Dennis Archer Jr. for facilitating this conversation, and a special thank you to Hiram and his team at the Michigan Chronicle for consistently producing such a highly respected forum. PNC recently announced a commitment of more than $1 billion to help end systemic racism and support economic empowerment of African Americans and low and moderate income communities. While our commitment to low and moderate income communities is not new, we are now approaching this work with a more deliberate focus on our African American communities. The $1 billion commitment will come to life through our Community Development Banking Team, which is led by our Vice President of Community Development, Brian Keeler. Brian's team works to boost the quality of life in moderate income neighborhoods through financial education, consumer programs, community development lending, and investing. While we anticipate making some targeted contributions in 2020, including $200,000 to the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law, in support of their work to ensure voting access for all communities, particularly African Americans and other voters of color. We plan to have our philanthropical response unfold more fully in 2021. Each of us has a role to play in combating racism and discrimination, and PNC is committing to driving real change in areas which we can make the greatest impact. Thanks to all of you for attending today's important conversation on social justice and corporate accountability. It was truly my pleasure to welcome you this morning. I look forward to hearing from our panel. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Good morning. My name is Chad Howard, President and Chief Operating Officer of Signal Restoration Services. Signal Restoration and our co-CEOs, Frank Torrey and Mark Davis, are honored to be sponsors of Michigan Chronicles, Pancakes, and Politics. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today. Signal is a property restoration contractor specializing in remediation, disaster cleanup, environmental services, and reconstruction of commercial properties. We remediate damage resulting from natural disasters, fire, water, wind, as well as provide cleaning and sanitization services for facilities all throughout the country. With over 300 locations, Signal is a leading disaster restoration contractor in North America. Our mission at Signal is to provide relentless customer service and immediately and consistently deliver exceptional results whenever and wherever disaster strikes. As a Michigan-based company, we are pleased to support Pancakes and Politics, an event that provides a platform to better our local Detroit community as well as the state of Michigan. Now, more than ever, it's increasingly important to have the opportunity to discuss pressing issues within the business, social, and political arenas that our community is facing. Signal is proud to be a sponsor of an event that allows the ideas of a diverse group of leaders and community directors to be expressed and, most importantly, put into action. On behalf of Signal Restoration, thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed the event.
4, 3.
Thank you, Amy and Chad. And again, Hiram has thanked our sponsors. I want to thank you all once again, as we could not do this without you. Now, going back to the question at hand, we began to talk about corporate responsibility. Reverend Anthony, you pulled some CEOs together with the mayor at a very important time in the city of Detroit. I think the announcement that you made and the timeliness of it led to Detroit being one of the more peaceful cities as relates to people's reactions around the country. Talk about your opinion as it relates to the responsibility that our corporations have as it relates to this issue.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks to Hiram and you and Vicki and everybody for the forum. If I can go back to one of the points you made earlier, you talked about when you were with your friends on the lake, and they were talking about protesting and marching and why black folk do it. It's not the marching that creates the reason or the rationale or black folk just like to march. Marching calls attention to issues. It shines a light on the problem. So when you see protests, the march in and of itself does not do it. The march calls attention to it. The march, the protest raises the ire of the community around an issue. It is what happens following the march, i.e. the protest leads to policy. When George Floyd was killed, the nation saw for the first time, racism revealed in a real ugly form. And for many people, that was a shock. But it's not a shock to us because it happens all the time. But the fact that it was brought to you in live and living color, it shocked America. And it was so tragic, so raw, so terrible, that it tore at the very heartstrings of black and white and young and old, not only people here locally and nationally, but people around the world. Had it not been for the camera, had it not been for the cell phone, that would never have occurred. But the reality is, when you look at the civil rights movement prior to this time, back in the day, we had Walter Cronkite, we had Chet Huntley and David Brinkley. They brought the news. You saw the dogs, you saw the water hoses. People denied what was going on in the South until they saw it on the 5 o'clock news. Now you see it almost every day. Corporations are institutions. They are part of the very fabric of American society. When they speak, people listen. They have lobbyists. They give money. They build buildings. They hire people. They provide tax bases. So for that kind of institutional life, it makes a difference. So it's a natural phenomenon for corporations to speak up. So when I called the mayor about getting corporations to come and to talk, he was kind of uneasy about it. He wasn't sure, but I said, Mayor, we got to do this. He agreed. He did it in terms of, I sent letters. I put it out to them that you just can't talk about what you're doing on the inside of the company. You got to talk about what's going on the outside of the company. And so they came out and they stood at the center, Coleman Young Center, and they made statements about their commitment to social justice and to ending racism. The gentleman to my left was one of them. You had other companies that stood there and talked about their commitment. Now, we know some of them are doing a few things inside, but that's not enough. It's not good enough. You got to do some things on the outside. And it's about policy, Dennis, not just about protest. It's about policy. What are you doing to effectuate change in terms of policy and in terms of your own company? What are you doing historically within the confines of your own building as it relates to your hires, your board, your procurement, your contracts, your staff? What are you sending through the mainstream of your company? And so it is in that context that we find ourselves at this moment in time. And so it's something for everybody to do, including the corporate community.
So, Gary, you got that call and that letter from the Rev. Talk about your thought process that went from getting that call to standing there to making the recent announcement that you've made.
Well, Denny, first, thank you very much, Hiram and the Michigan Chronicle and Vicki and this esteemed panel. It's great to be here today, and it's a great opportunity to have this conversation. I think growing up in Detroit and being part of this community and having these conversations with Reverend Anthony for 30 years, I think this is an amazing opportunity for change. And I think it is an opportunity that, if done right, will be sustainable, and there'll be a sustainability to it that will be unlike maybe any other time in our history. We've had the chance as corporate America, but particularly corporate Detroit, to listen and to see and to understand what's happening and to make changes and to change ourselves within our own companies and to try and influence others outside of our companies. When we stood up at that press conference with the mayor and great leaders of corporate Detroit, I saw a level of sincerity and honesty and commitment that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And you're right. The corporate Detroit, corporate America has an opportunity. I work at a bank, and banks are in the business of lending. Banks are in the business of helping people get home ownership and business ownership. And we can direct our influence to areas that are suffering in America. The 2020 Census Bureau report just came out saying that 44% of Black Americans are homeowners and 73% of whites are homeowners. It's an astounding figure. Systemic racism limits people's economic ability, their educational ability. Their lower credit scores come from that. The ability to get a mortgage and to really get into the home ownership life. And so this is our opportunity at TCF, and I know other banks. We heard a great report this morning from Amy at PNC, who's sponsoring this morning. We got together as a bank and said, we have an opportunity, let's do something really bold. And we sat down around a table and we talked about the kinds of things that we could do. We have a Heart and Home program that we're putting $10 million into to be able to loan people mortgages, but to give them opportunity by giving them down payments for homes, which is a critical piece of the difference between someone who can get into a home and not get into a home. The costs of a mortgage, so we're putting that out as well. And we're giving that money away because we think that's our job and our responsibility. We announced $1 billion loan program. That $1 billion is going to be focused on only the minority track, small businesses, African-American owned businesses, women-owned businesses that just have not been at the table. And $1 billion is a lot of money and a lot of power to be able to do some really great things. We're going to partner up with the CDFIs. We're going to partner up with the organizations that know where these small businesses are, and we're going to try and really change the focus of where our loans and our opportunity for loans goes. Detroit is our hometown. We're the hometown bank. We're building a headquarters here. We see such an advantage and an opportunity in 2020 to change the dialogue. And really, I'm very optimistic. I know we're living through a pandemic. We've got some offices in Midland that went through a flood. We've got this opportunity, the protests that are going on. But I think, as the Reverend said, it opened our eyes and our pocketbooks and challenged us. And I think we're going to use this time to do some really historic things that I think never before in our history have been this opportune and this moment, and I'm optimistic about it.
Thank you. You know, you mentioned being at the table. And Rev, you know that some black folk get to the table and they're not there representing all, they're representing one.
They eat everything at the table.
Everything at the table. Right. And I would like to say that Carla's not one of those people, because I sit around tables with Carla Walker Miller, and she speaks up, she's fearless, she will take on and begin the hard conversations in a room where normally they're not used to that. People become uncomfortable, but she comes from a business perspective, and what she says makes sense. So I applaud you for that, having witnessed it firsthand. Talk from your perspective as an African-American woman celebrating 20 years in business with corporate clients, but serving the community. Talk about your position on corporate responsibility as it relates to the topic.
Well, Dennis, just to respond to what you just said, you said I'm fearless. I'm not fearless.
You seem fearless.
Many times I am very fearful, because I know that my words not only have impact, but they have ramifications. But I have a responsibility because I am there. The only reason for me to be there is to say what's not going to be said if I'm not there. And that's why I am compelled to speak up. So I welcome everyone who's speaking up right now, because it makes me it makes me more fearless than I've ever been, right? It's like some people want to say, where have you all been? And I want to say, well, now that you're here, let's do this. Right. And there's so much work to do. And so I really applaud Reverend Anthony. One of the things you said, Reverend Anthony, was that it's not just internal leadership, it's external. And when I wrote the letter to CEOs, the letter was actually for my internal team, because I knew they were as shaken. I knew they were hurting as much as I was. And I knew that I had more resources to deal with my pain, and they did not. You know, they were sitting there stuck in their homes, wondering if they were going to be laid off, if their families were going to die, just like me, right? What the ramifications of the protest were. And they were listening to the media narrative, which at the time I wrote the letter was still about riots, not protests, and not movements, and not justice. So I always I talk to my team all the time about the difference between activity and impact. And my first thought was, how do I make an impact for my team first? And I wrote a letter and read it to my team on a Zoom call. And as most of the black people in this room can attest, we were getting calls from white people, more calls from white people than have ever come through my cell phone in life. And many of those calls were, wow, what do we do? You know, what do you think about this? And as I answered those calls, I started to write my thoughts. And nothing transformative. Do what you know to do. Lead with your humanity. Lead with your humanity, and in a way that allows your team to walk in their own humanity, because you set agendas. CEOs set and fund and lobby and create agendas. And if racial justice is part of your agenda, if, as you said when you were with Reverend Anthony, that Black Lives Matter, if Black Lives Matter, there are some obvious things that you should do.
Well put. Jeff, interesting. You've got presence in Grand Rapids, presence here in Detroit. Your company represents 100+ corporations, many of them public, around the country. So someone in your position, one would think, when Carla talks about fear, would be concerned about stepping out on such a sensitive topic. You obviously have moved beyond that concern. Your billboards are up. They're causing a stir. You've made personal commitments, and you're challenging your clients and colleagues to make commitments. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, watching as many of my white CEO male colleagues, the George Floyd murder, if that didn't hit you in your heart, that would be the first thing that you should analyze. But corporations are made up of individuals, and individuals have the responsibility. I think corporations have responsibility as a total, but those are led by CEOs. And so my response was to tell the black community, I see you, and I'm going to have impact and take action. And so we took a billboard in downtown Minneapolis, 2 in Detroit on 75, and 1 on Woodward, under this banner of America Can't Breathe. If one can't breathe, no one can't breathe. And I believe that we, as white CEOs who do have this power, have to give it up, have to provide the access, and have to say we have this, I'm calling it unconscious privilege. Unconscious bias is a negative. I think it's unconscious privilege. We have this access. What are we going to do with it? And so AmericaCan'tBreathe.org is a collection of really my colleagues in the boardrooms who want to do something and don't know how. So they didn't call me. They simply wondered what to do. It began with letters, but it's not about what you say, it's what you do. And so the action of this is to collect dollars. We've committed $50,000, and I've collected much more than that now, thankfully, but it is to go to black entrepreneurs, black small businesses, and nonprofits serving the black community, and those funds directed by black-led individuals. And that is, I simply want to gather the assets and say, tell us how we can make an impact, an economic impact. So I think that's what I felt compelled to do. I didn't talk about it, I just did it because it's not a me campaign, it's a we campaign. Anybody can own this and take this and get behind it. But I think we have a responsibility as individuals leading corporations to analyze every aspect of our life, every aspect of our relationships, where we put our money, where we invest our money, where we leave our state. You know, every aspect we should analyze, and so that's what I felt compelled to do.
Thanks, Jeff. So Kelly Root, you work for a very large, successful, historic, family-run business, privately held business, but you also happen to be the press. And so you've got a couple different perspectives, right? Because you have your view as the head of the editorial team as it relates to corporate responsibility, but you also have your company has a corporate responsibility to the community. So talk to us about how you navigate through those down those two different avenues.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for having me on the panel. It's been a very eventful couple of months. I started at Crane the first day that the statewide lockdown for coronavirus took effect. So I got in and got my laptop and my badge and basically went home and had to get to know our staff and our company basically through Zoom. I have to say that I think they've been doing a great job, but you're right that I kind of experienced this moment from two perspectives. We are covering the corporate response to all of this social justice issues, but we are also, as a news organization, talking about our own responsibilities and how we cover these issues going forward. This is a moment of reckoning for news organizations throughout the country. And it's important to me that we are covering the right issues and that we're covering them the right way. This has not been an easy time for the media to look at their. We look inward at the same time that we're looking outward, and we are seeing that companies that we cover are paying a lot of attention to these issues right now. And we want to make sure that that we are fair and that we are looking at our own attitudes and our own representation and trying to be very intentional about how we present these issues.
So I'm going to kick it over to Vicki in a second, but if I could just ask a follow-up, particularly of you and Reverend Anthony. I think that people around the world, and I know particularly here at home in Detroit, there is now zero tolerance for words not followed by action. Before, I think people could be quieted by promises, blue ribbon commissions, we're going to research and get back to you. Those days are over. And I think people want action. Words are fine, but followed by immediate action. And so, Rev, you're in a position as you command the people, and Kelly, you command the press. How do we hold these corporations accountable for the promises that they've made? How do we track it, and how do we track it and hold them accountable?
Well, I can tell you one of the things that we have done in ACP, we've had a report card. And our report card essentially grades corporations and companies on how they're doing. We look at your board, we look at your community outreach, we look at your executive staff, we look at everything, and we give them a grade. And we have done that in the past. We're reigniting it now. Some people think, Dennis, that from a corporate business community perspective, that if you're social justice oriented or concerned, that's somehow antithetical to business. You can't make money. No, that's wrong. You can be socially justice responsible and still make money. Nike made a whole lot of money when they went out on a limb, so to speak, and supported Colin Kaepernick. Their sales escalated. LeBron is still selling gym shoes, even though he's talking about social justice and supporting people who are victims of police brutality and in the Black Lives Matter movement. There was a time back in the day, Dennis, and you know it, when we had, in terms of GM, Ford, Chrysler, the major corporations, there were go-to people. You could go to a Bill Brooks. You could go to a
Frank Fountain.
Frank Fountain at Chrysler. You could go to Eric Peterson or a Vivian Picard. You could go to S. Martin Taylor. You could go to various people. They had budgets. They had staff. And for some reason, when black folk leave, they are not replaced.
That's right.
And we're in an era now where we're not replacing the very few African Americans that are in positions of power in these corporate communities. I mean, I look at various companies, I hate to call them out, but they got to be at least identified. I mean, I would like to see more from the Illich organization. Mm-hmm. Maybe you know something that I don't know, but I don't know who the go-to person is there. I know they have Ryan English there now, but what does that mean? Do you have any power? Do you have any authority? Is anybody on your board? Are you moving? I mean, you got 4, 5 different entities in this community.
Do you have a budget?
And do you have a budget? I mean, who can you call? And then and I think the gentleman over here mentioned it well when he said that sometimes we do things we're not even aware of it. It's implicit or explicit racism. That's why the governor has just done this thing about racism and making it a public health issue. But we make assumptions in corporations. We assume that people are doing the right thing. If the head is not on straight, the body cannot move. And sometimes we have the head on straight and the body, the part down here with the staff is good, but we catching hell in between. Because what Gary might say is not going down, not in his company though, but what the head might say is not going down, and it's not coming up because you got middle management who got the good old boy network that don't work for us, who have not gotten the memo that we're going in a different direction. And so CEOs must hold their companies accountable. The community must do that. But CEOs have to send a clear message that this is the new program. This is where we're going. I mean, like Mary Barr set up this advisory board. You own it, Tanya Allen. That came out as a result of what we did downtown a few weeks ago. They provided $10 million to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And let me just say this. Money is good, but it's not the end all. Mm-hmm. What the hell is your policy? What's your program? What are you doing to really effectuate meaningful change so that it does not always have to come from an individual, but it's in the mainstream of the organization? And that's where we're running into some issues. I hope that people will pick up the September issue of the Atlantic. There's an article in there by a brother by the name of Ibrahim Kende. He's a Boston University professor dealing with racism and anti-racism in the Boston University Center. And he's talking about how did we get here? Mm-hmm. We got here because we were not paying attention. We got it because we got comfortable. Mm-hmm. But even more important how we got here, how are we going to get the hell out of here to the degree that we move in a different direction? That's where Cranes can come in by holding people accountable, by not making assumptions, any media, that folk are out there just raising hell to be raising hell. We raising hell to bring some heaven to the degree that we want some significant change. So I'm glad that we have some relationships with individuals, but if you have people within your organization that can establish relationships that you don't have, that makes it even better. We got some companies that have that. We have a good relationship with TCF, I'm talking about the community. A good relationship with DTE, I'm talking about the community. We have a good relationship with some others. Ford, you got Pam Alexander. Some of the casinos used to have people, they don't have them now. Only one that I know they got anybody is Greektown with Marvin Beatty. They used to, MGM used to have Julietta Cotiebo. Used to have Real Talk. This is Real Talk. They used to have Julietta Cotiebo. Joe Davis, they don't have nobody that I'm aware of now. Motor City has Jackie Woods in a certain role, but she's not in a power position to make some things happen. So I'm saying, stop playing us and stop playing games to the way you throw out certain things to mitigate noise. But then when the noise is over, we're still catching the hail. I'm saying we can do better than this. And this is a Kairos moment, as we say in the church. That means it's a moment to bring about some significant change. I know you said we weren't supposed to make no speech, but
we know you can't help yourself.
You know, I'm just saying,
You're a preacher.
I got to get mine in because I see Vicki wouldn't get ready to jump on me. I'm sorry, Vicki.
I would ask Kelly, from the position of the press, you have the ability to hold the corporations, the business community, which are your constituent, accountable. How does Cranes plan to do that?
Well, we are sensitive to that now more than ever, and I think one of the answers is to keep asking the questions and not let it drop after one question, not let it drop after one story. This is an issue that touches every beat that we cover: finance, manufacturing, higher ed. I mean, I don't see diversity and inclusion as a beat in and of itself. I think that all of our reporters need to be asking these questions and holding their own, sources to account. It's a newsroom-wide effort. I think that we're all trying to broaden our base of sources so that we're not going to the same people all the time. I think it's really important for, as we talked about, going into layers of corporations to really find people that are doing the work and making the change and getting them on the front page instead of going to the same spokespeople all the time. These are issues that we are talking about in our coverage daily. We meet daily. Of course, it has to be by Zoom, unfortunately, but we are talking about this with every story that we cover in both a broad way. What are the beats we should be doing? What are the stories that we should be covering? But we're also talking about what are the questions that we should be asking? Who are the sources? Are we going deep enough? Are we truly representing, the community that we cover? So.
Thank you. Vicki?
All right. Well, we are getting some questions from our audience members, but first I want to go to Carla Walker-Miller. Your letter was powerful, your letter to CEOs. It was asking CEOs to help expedite the pace of change, which we know they can do. You mentioned in your remarks that there are obvious things that people can do, like $15 an hour for their employees, improve corporate recruiting, training, and promotion strategies, and spend procurement dollars with Black companies. I'm curious, what kind of response have you gotten to that letter? Have you had folks step up and say, yeah, I plan to do that?
In general, I've had positive response. I didn't expect anyone to reach out to me and say, yeah, Carla, I got the message and we're doing it right now. But I think the general response and the general expectation from all people of goodwill is that corporations, if you are a corporation and you're making billions of dollars in revenue, but you cannot figure out how to pay a family enough to survive on, then there is a problem with your corporation. You cannot tell me that you have to increase the price of a hamburger. You don't. You have to decide that humanity is more important, and maybe you make $4.5 billion instead of $5.5 billion. You have to make a decision about who you are and how important your people are to your success. So corporations are beginning to step up, but just like everything else, it's a journey. If you look at where we are now versus where we were a few weeks ago, we're at this place on the continuum. And I expect that it's going to be unacceptable for corporations not to step up. And we collectively are going to hold their feet to the fire.
All right, we have a question from Phyllis Edwards, who asked the question, are these corporations addressing the injustices within their own organizations? Are there a diverse group of decision makers at the table? We'll start with you, Jeff.
All right. Well, I think that's the answer is no, there's not. Right. So you can look at public company boards, public company leadership, and I wanted to tag on to something Carla said earlier. That she feels responsible or has this fear to speak out, but is it really your responsibility, or is it my responsibility to walk into that room with a bunch of people that look like me, who are male predominantly, who are white almost exclusively, and say, hey guys, what's wrong? Do you not see this? And so I think that the fact is that we do have to start internally and say, what are we going to do about it? It's both recruiting and retention. Right, so let's not have a back door because we have not supported, people of color in any way. We simply wanted to check the box. So what are the programs to listen to them, to give them opportunity, to create potential for them to grow within the organization and to be open to that. But I think that's our responsibility as the current power brokers. That is the reality. So what are we going to do about it? And so yes, I think it's important to look at it, to take action and not just say we're going to create a DEI committee and it's going to be led by Black people and they're going to tell us what we should do. No, you as the CEO should take responsibility. You should walk into that next board meeting and say, okay, our next board member is going to be diverse, period.
All right, and Carla, I know you've done some things within your organization, and you've actually committed to even hiring more Detroiters in the market.
Oh, absolutely. We're based in Detroit. We love Detroit. And Detroit has a higher unemployment rate, even pre-COVID, than anyone else. So we have a commitment. In our Detroit office, we have a goal of 60% of our team members should be Detroit. It's an on-ramp to the energy efficiency industry, which is the fastest growing industry in energy right now. And that is how you change communities. That is how you change communities.
And Gary, I know you put that $1 billion on the table, but what about within TCF Bank itself? How are you doing in terms of diversity and having a diverse group of individuals at the table to help make decisions?
So I think if Jeff would look at our company, he'd be very proud. We've got an extraordinarily diverse board of directors. It is geographically diverse. It is diverse in terms of its color. It's diverse in terms of its women participation. We have a very diverse organization, and it is getting more diverse. We talk about unconscious bias training. Used to be in the old days, that was the top 10 people went through that training. Mm-hmm. Today, in our organization, we've got 8,000 people, and all 8,000 have been through that training. You talk about diversity and inclusion leadership. In TCF today, it's not a middle manager role. It is at the executive table. We went so far as to steal the leader of the NAACP,
White,
put him at the table, Donnell White, who's spectacular. And we put leadership in almost every place in our company and say, you all need to find ways to make this more diverse, more inclusive. We are having conversations across the entire company. A lot of years went by when you didn't have these conversations, when you didn't have these roundtables, when you didn't give people a voice and the opportunity to really speak out. That's a critical part of what's happening at TCF and amongst our colleagues. We're not the only bank that's doing it. Flagstar is doing it, and Huntington and PNC, and we're proud of the action. In Detroit, we had a strategic neighborhood fund where the mayor challenged corporate Detroit to put not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but millions. And those requests were to not adopt a neighborhood, but to partner with a neighborhood. We're not adopting Detroit, we're partnering with it. We are thrilled that we're in Grandmont Rosedale. We've put $5 million into that effort, and we've raised almost $40 million for that effort in the neighborhoods, and it has been one of the really great opportunities. The Reverend said, it's not all about money, but when you put your money where your mouth is, you increase everybody in those communities and those neighborhoods. We're investing in small businesses. When Wayne County called us at the beginning of the pandemic and said, we've got 40,000 small businesses that are really at the edge. What can we do about that? And we partnered up with Wayne County and we put together a loan fund that within 3 weeks, we were putting out millions of dollars to small businesses at $5,000, $10,000, $50,000. We had the opportunity to go into the Marygrove College neighborhood where we said, we are going to partner with this neighborhood. The mayor said, listen, there's some great housing stock here. We need people to move in. We need people to fix up these homes, and we need down payment assistance. And we were able to go into Marygrove. The very first house that we did in Marygrove, we provided the mortgage and we provided a $25,000 assistance, a grant to be able to fix up that home. I went to the closing and I met with the person who was buying the home. And I said, so tell me, why you come into this neighborhood? And she said, well, I'll tell you why. She said, I grew up in the home next door. My parents still live there. I never thought I'd have the opportunity to come back and live next door to my parents and to be a homeowner. That's the job of banks. That's the job of corporate Detroit. When we made the decision to rename the convention center and take that name of Cobo off, it was a statement. Reverend Anthony was there and he said to us, it's your time and you need to act. And that really is the message for corporate Detroit today. It is raising diversity and inclusion to the top levels of the organization. It's the unbiased training for everybody. Nobody is exempt from that, and nobody's perfect. those are the opportunities we have today, and it really, truly, it's thrilling to see it happening. As Carla says, it's a moment to be able to take the letter off the table and turn it into action. And turning into action is what people want to do. They've been afraid to do it. They're nervous about it. Today, you don't have to be nervous about it. Everybody saw in America that George Floyd video. Everybody. And it woke us up to an opportunity to gather together and to do things that we should be doing as communities and as corporations. And it's people, it's money, and it's opportunity. And in so many ways, I am thrilled to be in this moment in this community. I see so much hand-holding, so much opportunity. The encouragement you're giving to us is encouragement that we needed and we want, and now we're able to use our voice to speak it. And we're walking the walk and we're talking the talk and we're doing it together, and it's a really wonderful thing to see.
Sounds like you're excited about
How about
that.
And Vicki, let me just say this. There are not a whole lot of CEOs like Gary Torres.
Right.
He's different. And I said that money's not everything, but money certainly does a whole lot of good. Let me make that very clear. And having people at the table is so important. It's critical. He mentioned Donnell White, who used to be our executive director, who's now over at his place, still doing social justice from the inside. He don't really know, but we planted Donnell over there. Social justice. But at any rate, you know, I used to go to Rod Gillum at GM.
Right.
Can't do that anymore.
Frank Fountain.
And all those persons. But let me just say this. The fact that corporations step up, when DTE stepped up and did Counted and Connected Futures, we provided 51,000 laptop computers, K-12 to students in the city of Detroit, public and private schools. That's major. That was $23 million from various corporations who contributed to that. And so I commend Jerry Norcia and that team, Mark and Nancy and those people. They have Ben Felton over there. Everybody doesn't do that. They stepped up. That whole project started last year on a trip to Israel that Gary put together. When we came out of the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus was laid, we said we had to do something big. Didn't know what it was. And the big resulted in that 51,000 laptop computers going to students in Detroit. And through a phone call and a letter, again, that I sent to Jerry and other folk, and they responded. I'm simply saying there's a role that they can play. That's a part of the social capital that you're developing. You're developing people. They will be your employees. They will be your executives as we go forward. I'm simply saying if corporations want to do the right thing, they will do the right thing. But they got to want to do it. They got to want to bring people to the table. And I agree. You walk into a room and all your folk around your table are white and no women. You got an issue there. You're missing out. You're missing from the diversity of thought and intellect and brilliance. Just think how much further along your company could be if you had that diversity in terms of trying to do some things different. So, and we're not trying to take the whole cake. Damn, can we get a slice? To the degree that we make some difference here. And I'm just saying that I agree with Gary wholeheartedly. We are at a moment, Vicki, we're at a moment in America where if we're going to seize the moment, now's the time to do it. And let's not look back. Let's go forward.
And Kelly, a similar question to you from Yvette McElroy Anderson. Has Cranes looked internally to cast a broader net to ensure that your teams are representative, and is Cranes being intentional in that area?
Absolutely we are, and absolutely we can do better. This is, as I mentioned, an issue that many newsrooms are struggling with right now. And I don't use the word reckoning lightly when I say that journalists all across the country are demanding more representation internally. We're talking about, changes in beat coverage and the need to reflect more of the community that we serve. And Crane is doing what many companies are doing right now in terms of company-wide diversity and inclusion training and employee engagement surveys and internal committees to talk about what we can do better. You know, we're not there, and we're working on it. And that's one of my goals as executive editor, is to ensure that we are more reflective of who we cover. And I will put a plug in to say that we have an opening right now for a small business reporter covering Metro Detroit, and we are going to try to cast the broadest net that we can. So if anybody has candidates, send them along, because, you know, it's not often that we can hire these days. I know a lot of companies are in that position, so we are eager to improve in that area for sure.
Well, Detroit NABJ will be sending you a few candidates.
We've been in contact. We've been in contact.
Can I make a quick statement?
Sure.
Because it's interesting, because to me I categorize some of the solutions that we're talking about here on stage today. Some of them are Band-Aids and some of them help us get to a cure. And so the committees, the donations, the charitable donations, the laptops, the Jerry-led, a lot of that is a Band-Aid. But to get to a cure, you know, black folks need economic independence. They need education more on par. They need job training so they can get a sustainable job, so they can support their families. You know, black folks want to build wealth too. We just don't want jobs. We want to build wealth like white folk want to build wealth. And so talk about not only what you all can do, but what the community as a whole can do to help get us to that cure, get us to wealth building, get us to job parity, get us to job training to get more sustainable jobs so we can take care of our families.
Well, I can tell you this, Dennis, that one of the things that we're very much concerned about what you're saying. One of the issues that I think comes with this $1 billion commitment that TCF Bank is making is small business development, which goes to developing small business in the community to become big businesses.
Right.
And I think one of the things that corporations need to do, and I can tell you my experience with DTE, we have been working with a minority task force on the very point that you've been raising, to the degree that we can partner. Every corporation that has companies that do business with through their procurement program, people that do your building, your construction, your general operations, they should be partnering with a minority partner. And that has to come from the top. That's a part of what you do. Part of that investment helps them become a major independent entity. Everybody started somewhere. I remember Gary Torgo when he used to be walking around Detroit selling real estate. Now he's the CEO of several $1 billion of business through TCF Financial. So he's making other people whole and significant. So I'm simply saying that there has to be the will. And if we don't build people, you know, you give a man a fish he can eat for a day. But if you teach him and show him and help him construct that, he can fish for himself and hire some fishermen and women. And I think that's what we're about here. So it really goes back to the will of the corporation and the company. And you and I, others, have to hold their feet to the fire. I'm hoping, like you on this advisory committee for General Motors, give them some advice, and they should listen to it and implement it. I mean, who does General Motors have on their board? I remember when Leon Sullivan was on the board. He came up with the Sullivan Principles for General Motors. There's never been another guy on that board like Leon Sullivan that I'm aware of that has had such an impact. And I'm simply saying, if you're on the boards, make a difference. If you're in the executive office, if you're in the C-suite, don't just sit there, but sing sweetly about things that we need to have done in terms of policy. And part of what you're saying is definitely a part of that.
Thanks, Ray.
All right, a question from Keith Jennings. He says, since salaries are typically not disclosed, what can be done to ensure that equitable pay occurs within corporations? And is that something you all look at, or are you looking at now, given the climate that we're in right now?
So, Vicki, I was on a call yesterday with the head of our HR department talking about looking at everybody's positions, everybody's salaries, every single person's titles. Titles are very important also. Titles got to match the position, and anybody that's in that position, no matter their color or the fact that they're a woman or a man, should make any difference in where they get that title and how they get those increases.
But we know it happens.
It does. It absolutely does. And that's why we need to look at it. We need to study it, and we need to take action. I think what Denny said is so true. There's opportunity to give charity, and there's opportunity to put together social justice funds, and we're all doing it. But really the way to do it is to elevate people through their small businesses and through their jobs, to say, you're the same as everybody else. We put this loan program together because small businesses for African Americans and women have not been treated the same as a white business or a white opportunity. That's what we have to do. And that's what the people of color want. They want to be in the same place. They don't want charity. They want to be business savvy, business successful, and have the chance to gain like every other part of the community. And I think when you read Carla's letter and you talk about the kinds of things that we're trying to encourage everybody to do, it's more than a letter on a table. It's actually doing it and taking action. And I think this is the moment for it.
And since everyone else is referencing my letter, I do want to say one of the most important things that I said, though, was invite Black people into rooms where decisions are made by people with inherent privilege that disproportionately affect those without it. That is what we must do.
Jeff, you want to chime in?
No, I think it's exactly right. And I think this is so we do salary surveys in our industry. We make sure everything is equitable. But it never occurred to me to think about how I got my start and the opportunities that I have. That wasn't because I was just smarter or had some unique angle. It was because my co-founder, our fathers who are white, wrote us a check to get us started. Mm-hmm. And I've reflected on that and said, okay, it's not just about making sure that we defend ourselves when attacked or challenged on this. It's actually to lean into it and say, what can I do even further than that? Not just to say, yes, I have relationships that are diverse, or I have a board that's diverse, or I have a team that's diverse. It's what am I going to do with that beyond? And so maybe I want to go for 25% diverse employees, not just 13%, which is the Black population of the U.S. Why not stretch further? And so I think that's again it keeps coming up. But this is the people in power have to make a decision and then push it all the way down to the organization, to their board, to their network, right? I'm a small business, but I have a big access, and that access I have to use for others who don't have it.
Yesterday, the governor declared that racism is a public health crisis in the state of Michigan. I also interviewed City Councilwoman Tasha Green in Westland, who that city council on Monday night unanimously approved a similar proposal or resolution. One of the things that Ms. Green said is kind of went to what you were saying about losing our leaders, but she went on to say that we just cannot show up and march and go home, because 30 to 40 years later, we don't want our grandchildren and children to still be talking about Black Lives Matter. So I want to know from you, each of you, how optimistic are you that we'll get there? Reverend.
Very optimistic, Vicki. I'm a preacher. I walk by faith, not by sight. So I have faith. And let me just say this. I salute, I commend, I'm proud of all of the young people and the older folk who've been marching, protesting, and raising their voice in this era, in this point, in this history, because Black Lives Matter. It's the same type of energy and force that we had in the Civil Rights Movement. One of the things that John Lewis said before he passed was that I hope that the young people of the 20s catch the same spirit of the young people of the 60s. John Lewis and that group, Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Fannie Lou Hamer, Daisy Bates, Ella Baker, Martin Luther King, all those folk laid a foundation. They marched and they got civil rights, They got fair housing. They got voting rights. They integrated hotels, restaurants, etc. Their feet led to a destination of accomplishment. They didn't say Black Lives Matter, but that's what they were fighting for. Black lives mattered. America, check us out. We matter. The same thing is happening in 2020 with these young people, black, white, red, yellow, etc. And they're marching in the suburban communities, which is good, because white folk need to see white folk marching. White folk need to hear from other white folk. Don't just call me in to talk to white folk. Y'all talk to each other to the degree that they need to hear from you. They need to hear from their white corporate leader that this is what we need to do. And so what you have are two traditions, but one movement. The tradition of the 50s and the 60s, the tradition of the 20s. It's a different tradition, Black Lives Matter, but it's one movement. So I'm very optimistic. I have a lot of faith because I see the change occurring. We're at a moment that we've never been at before. And thank God we're here. But we must keep it up. And the protests must be changed into policy. If the guy in the White House has done anything, he's given us an opportunity to change some of everything, because he has pulled the scab off of a sore that was festering, and it's now is open up. So he's given America an opportunity to heal itself and to fix itself if we seize the opportunity to do it. So I'm optimistic. I believe that we can do it, and when good people are determined, they can make anything happen.
Vicki, I'm not a preacher, but I got and the Reverend tells me all the time.
You hang around Reverend Anthony long enough.
I'm not a preacher, but he says you should preach. I got a lot of faith, and I think this is not a coincidence that we're suffering through a pandemic and through the protests at the same time. Everybody is home, being able to really focus in their own families, in their own neighborhoods, in their own communities. And I agree so much with Reverend Anthony. This is a time to be faithful, it's a time to be optimistic, and it's a time for action. And I think we're seeing a lot of that.
I would echo, I have a 21-year-old daughter. She's in college. She marched in a suburban community.
Yeah.
And I am optimistic by the fact that she and her friends expect more. They expect different things than what we expected at that age. They hold corporations accountable. They're on social media 24/7, so they're aware when Corporation X does this or the favorite product that they like. They are holding corporate leadership accountable for social justice decision making, and they make buying decisions based on that. So I think there is a lot of change for the younger generation, just in that regard.
Good point, Kelly.
Yeah, and I'm optimistic. There is an African saying that says, until the lions learn to write, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Mm-hmm. And so the lions have been writing for hundreds of years. Black people have been writing books for forever. And now people are reading and educating themselves. Mm-hmm. And if we understand the history, we won't make the assumptions that we are in the place that we're in because Black people are not as smart, as motivated, as capable. That's not it. So there's an opportunity to correct the miseducation that has occurred in this country, and it's happening right now. So I'm very optimistic.
And that's one of the things you put in that letter,
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I guess I'm an optimistic person. I'm a PR guy, right? I have to be. At the same time, I'm frustrated because I sat in those rooms or I wrote those letters, and there was so much consternation over saying the words Black Lives Matter by CEOs that should not have any issue with that. And so I'm cautiously optimistic until I see the results. And I was talking to Kelly earlier, measure this in a year. Measure this in 5 years. Don't measure it in the first 6 or 8 weeks. So I would love to be optimistic. I believe we are at a unique time where everything is exposed and we have to step up. But I think there was way too much. What is the minimum amount that I have to do? And I think that's where you talk about accountability. That's going to be the accountability that we have to hold others to.
And that's why it's so important you're in the room, because you just raised the point. They have a difficulty just acknowledging Black Lives Matter. Well, all lives matter, but they don't matter equally. That's the issue. And so that's why we find ourselves here. And that's why it's important for them to hear from you as the head of the organization. And saying Black Lives Matter does not mean other lives don't. It just means, look at this situation. If I had cancer matters, leukemia matters, coronavirus matters, because it's killing our people. Black Lives Matter, because it's killing our people. It's the same situation. And until we can acknowledge and recognize the problem, we can't deal with it, which is why we still are suffering 1,000 people dying a day, because we have a leader that has not recognized the problem. And if you don't recognize the problem, you sure can't deal with it.
And the intrinsic value of white lives has never been questioned. That is why you have to say, because you don't ever have to say white lives matter.
No.
That's why you have to say Black Lives Matter.
One final question from the audience. Derek Adams, how do you propose that we include the thousands of Black leaders within the business community who are not being heard? Any suggestions on how?
I think they are being heard. They were heard today. I mean, I think when we're talking about small business development, when we talk about investing in small businesses, when we're talking about contracts, when we're talking about procurement, who you think we're talking about? That's the businesses that are not at the table. When we're talking about putting people at the table, those are the businesses we're talking about. When he's talking about $1 billion commitment and small, that's what he's talking about. You are being heard. You have the Michigan, the MBEs. You have several people who are dealing with that, so you are being heard. And if you're not being heard, get on a pedestal and shout from the treetops that you need to be heard. Write a letter. Call somebody. And don't just say we're not being heard. Do you really want to be heard? And so we're here to hear you, but you got to speak up and speak out. And so I think people are being heard. That's why this panel is occurring on this morning here on the East Side, where Hiram got us up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right. All right, we're nearing the end, so Dennis, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vicki, and thanks to the panelists. This was an outstanding discussion. Thanks for the audience that viewed online and participated in our chat with Rochelle Riley. You know, a few things that I noted resonated with me today. Rev talking about companies must do things both on the inside and on the outside. Carla differentiating between activity and impact, and leading with your humanity. And she said it 2 or 3 times because I think it's that important. And if you say it yourself and listen to what you're saying, I think it resonates. 2 traditions, Rev, and 1 movement coming together in 2020. Mm-hmm. But I think that, you know, when Hiram and I talk about this issue, we talk about and we lead the conversation with accountability. In all of our businesses, we measure by metrics, SLAs, whatever you want to call them, our key performance indicators for our company. And so I challenge the community, the viewers, those of us on stage, to measure, to not forget, to hold accountable. And in doing so, act with your pocketbook, act with your voice, because you as an individual can make a difference. Thank you for joining us today for Pancakes and Politics. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, Vicki, my esteemed partner in this for a while now, and thanks to Hiram for this opportunity. Everyone enjoy your Thursday.